Slightly above average gamers, way above average podcast. Welcome to the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast with your hosts, J007TV and Sub1KD.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 23 of the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. I am J007, and I'm here, as always, with my partner, Sub1KD. How you doing, bud?
Can't complain. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's been a pretty busy and rather eventful week.
Yeah. Well, I've been reworking stuff. As you can see, and everybody who's catches this on our YouTube channel can see, I have a new mic setup because the last few episodes have been sounding rather terrible. We had some storms roll through here a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of power outages. I had 3 outages in a 24-hour period. Which somewhere in there, I think, damaged the mic, did something to it because all of a sudden it was bad. So went through, got some new hardware. Something not right is always an excuse to go spending, retail therapy. So new mic, new setup, and getting that up and running, getting my Twitch up and running, and then and kind of making that transition over from the Green app over to Twitch, and just getting all that going. How about you, man?
Kind of a little bit of the same stuff, but I want to talk about something you just mentioned. For those of you that don't know, aside from when he just mentioned it, Sub1 has moved over from kick.com over to Twitch TV, basically.
Yep.
We are really in the process of trying to push to get my man to affiliate. Very, very close. So if you guys are not already following him at twitch.tv/sub1KD, just spelled the exact same as it is on Twitter, please be sure to give him a follow and, turn those notifications on so you can see when my guy goes live. What you're actually going to hear, I've had to mute this dude a few times while playing with him, is a lot of funny rage, especially in the gulag, and just a lot of good content. So be sure to give him a follow and, let's help him get to affiliate.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And the rage comes free of charge.
Yeah, I think we both do it. But you know what's funny? You mentioned your mic. At one point, it sounded like a Jack in the Box drive-through speaker in like South Dallas at 4 a.m. And you went from sounding like perfect. I was the one that always had the like shitty sound issues, and we still have some issues we're trying to work out too. Like, it bugs me. Like, we both pay attention to the little things too, and want to improve on the little things. So like the little chair creaks that you might hear in the podcast, my kids in the background, the dogs, roosters, goats, cows, pigs, horses, llamas, yaks, any of that stuff that you hear in the background.
No llamas. Don't give my wife ideas.
Okay. I'm going to say that shit next time I'm on the phone and she's around. But anyway, so we really want to work to, improve the quality. And I think this is another step in the right direction. I mean, your mic sounds fantastic, dude.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in the spirit of that, in all the news going on, wanted to just touch base on the week in the old Twitter sphere. As everybody who's around there has seen and or heard, it's been a little busy. What are your thoughts on what's going on, Jay?
Well, I tweeted about this a little earlier today, and
yeah, we're going to read that in a minute.
Yeah, and I think you've tweeted about you tweeted about it yesterday too, and we have friends on from all spectrums of the Call of Duty Twitter universe, and some of them agree, some of them disagree, some of them like each other, some of them don't like each other, but we don't want to really get involved in any of the feuds in any way, so we try to stay above that.
Pettiness aside.
Yes. Okay, well, I did have my own feud over a football game, and I will say this, I am very, very petty. It's a character flaw. Me and a dude went at it for like 3 days. I totally polluted the timeline, and I offer my sincere apologies for that, but we're good now. In fact, we just DM'd a little bit ago. Got some funny shit I'm going to post here in a little while on Twitter, but anyway.
I can't wait for that. But look, here's the thing, right? I'm gonna read what you posted on Twitter, and then I'm gonna put my 2 cents in the hat, and then we're gonna move on. Um, so you posted this. We have friends of many different backgrounds in the Call of Duty community, some of which seem to want to get to go at each other on this app over disagreements on the game. When it comes to our podcast, we're looking to hear the viewpoints of everyone. There are things that we agree and disagree with our guests on. Hell, Sub One and I disagree on things too. This is Jay posting it, so I'm not talking to myself. Just because we are friends with someone or have a conversation, that doesn't mean that we fully endorse what they are doing or saying. We are also not going to be an echo chamber for anyone. We look to learn and provide objective content that is relevant to what is happening in the Call of Duty scene and gaming in general. And I want to add on to that. I agree 100%. And actually, one slight disagreement there, edit that I would have made if it were me, is we want to comment. We want to bring our perspectives and our commentary to the things going on in Call of Duty. The one thing that we don't want to do is just parrot the news. All right, there are absolutely terrific sources for that. Charlie Intel is always a good resource. Modern Warzone, Zach, who is immortal, over on YouTube, is probably the three biggest sources for the news. If you want to know the news, tune in there. If you want to hear what we have to say about the news, about that content that goes out and what's going on in the game, that's why you come to us, right? You come to us because we are slightly above average gamers and we have our ear to the ground on what's going on, and we offer our insights and our opinions on what we see and hear. And in doing that, we want to hear what other people's opinions are. We are not an echo chamber, and we don't want to be one. We don't want to be the only people talking about something. We want to get other people's opinions, and we want to hear the viewpoints outside of our little circles. And here's the thing: when you have different people that have different opinions, people are going to ruffle feathers. They're going to have other insights, and there's going to be people that do stuff that we don't always agree with. All right, and when that happens, it's important to listen to those people. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to like them, but you should listen to them, hear what they have to say, and understand it, so that when you speak on the topic, you have a fully informed viewpoint. And I think that's the biggest thing that people miss, is that they don't have a fully informed view, view of everything. And what we want to make sure that we're doing is hearing everybody out. Like, we want all the information, and we'll parse through it and tell you what we think is good and what we think is bad. We're not going to not listen to somebody because we don't agree with what they do or say. And there's my soapbox for the day.
No, that's exactly it, and that's exactly what I was looking to convey in the tweet. So, again, our goal for this whole podcast is to provide content for the Call of Duty community as a whole, but also to provide content for people that are more in our demographic, because there just aren't any other content creators that are out there doing podcasts for Call of Duty the way we do at our age. But we also want to bridge the gap between the average gamer or slightly above average gamer, dad or mom, with the more competitive side of the Call of Duty scene. So that's why we do what we do. And, we just wanted to clarify that with you. And, hopefully we can just move on.
Yeah. But speaking of moving on, there are some people that are having a hard time moving on this news. The Microsoft came out about a week ago, and they said they are looking to bring their exclusives to PlayStation. Did you hear about this?
I did. And I think that's a great move. I think that was part of a larger plan when, Phil Spencer, well, not Phil Spencer, but just Microsoft went, to start with their, Activision acquisition. Mm-hmm. I think that was part of their master plan. They clearly have a strategy for how they're wanting to go to market.
Yeah. And, I think when you look at it, the whole principle is that every game console maker makes exclusive titles that you can't get anywhere else unless you own that gaming platform. All the way back to the days of Sega and Nintendo, right? You had Mario versus Sonic. You had PlayStation came along and they had their exclusives, and and then Microsoft rolled up and they had Halo and Gears of War, right? And everybody's kind of done their own thing. Which back in the day when consoles, like when you could be a console only family and it made sense, and that was the predominant gaming industry, I think that made a lot more sense than it does now. Right now, especially with crossplay, once crossplay became a thing, the point of console exclusivity, in my opinion, kind of fizzled out. Right, like the pandemic killed it, and I think the rise of PC, I don't know if it's the rise of PC gaming or at least the re re-rise, redominance.
Redistribution of the player base.
Sure. Like just the fact that all of a sudden after the pandemic, everybody's able to buy a PC. I mean, so many people had to buy a PC that could actually handle gaming because they needed the graphics that could handle their live, their streaming and their live work environment that they had to work in, Zoom and Microsoft Teams and screen sharing and all of that. A bit more graphics intensive, and you kind of need. A lot of times, you end up needing a beefier PC than you would at back in your office. And so, I think a lot of people made a transition over to PC instead of for their gaming. As a result, right? They had the PC that could do it, especially in Warzone. There was a clear advantage in Warzone 1 to having a PC over a console, FOV. And so it's one of those things that there was not an incentive to buy another console. And so now that you're getting into this whole exclusive title battle, if you're Microsoft, it makes no sense to try and build exclusives because you're not going to win the hardware race, right? Both consoles are losing to PC.
So really, Microsoft is actually they're winning if you think about it, because
Well, yeah,
again, they have not only, like, just look at the MAUs for Call of Duty, right? It was 25% on PC, which was very surprising to a lot of people. 16% on PlayStation and 8% on Xbox. Well, what operates most PCs? It's the Microsoft operating system.
well, it's anybody playing games, you're going to play it on Microsoft. Apple doesn't do games very well.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I don't really get into the Apple side of things, but so they're winning between that 25% plus that 8%. So it's almost like they acknowledge that they lost the console war, but I think they won the overall war. So they lost the console
they're winning for sure.
Yeah, battle, and won the overall war as far as that goes. And I think that taking their titles over to PlayStation and PlayStation taking their titles to Xbox and PC, I think that that's just good for gaming. Because that's also going to breed, I think, more competition between the studios and the development houses. So I think that's a win-win for consumers.
You would think that, but the Xbox fanboys really had a hard time with it. When that news broke, I could not escape the number of people who were like trashing their consoles or like burning Xbox shirts or whatever.
What?
Yeah, it was weird. People are very attached to their devices for some reason. I play on Xbox because I've been on it for 17 years now, and the idea of having to start over with a new library of games and all of the achievements and everything on Sony is just unappetizing to me. So congratulations, Microsoft. You have me hooked for now.
I never liked the feel of the controllers on PlayStation. I didn't like that. Yeah, I liked the Xbox. That's why I stayed there.
They're for little tiny hands.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, I have no love for it. Like, if a game is available elsewhere, I don't care. Like, nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
What does it hurt you?
So here's where it's funny. Sony has been dominant with exclusives for a long time, right? They've had a lot of them, especially in the Japanese market, right? A lot of the Japanese RPGs and whatnot are exclusive based, and those and those exclusives have driven PlayStation sales and also the exclusive marketing to Call of Duty. We learned from the trial that there's a not insignificant portion of PlayStation owners who own a PlayStation for the sole and complete purpose of playing Call of Duty. They play nothing else, and and a good portion of the argument on why they play on PlayStation versus Xbox is you get, for the last, I don't know, I forget, what is it, 5-7 years, you get you get bonuses, you get extra in-game perks for owning a PlayStation versus playing on PC or playing on Xbox. And I think we are finally, with Microsoft completing their acquisition and that deal now expired, I think we're finally going to be seeing Sony have to move away. And their president actually gave a speech or gave an interview where he said, yeah, they're looking at expanding their exclusives as well, which I think is great. I think it's great for gaming.
Yeah, it's good for Sony too, because think about this. If they do that, that means they're going to pick up, gosh, I have to guess. Take a game like Spider-Man, right?
Yep.
I think they pick up an additional 50% in sales, easy. Because I know so many people on the timeline, just in the community that would love to play that game, but are on PC or on, Xbox.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even if they don't want to put it on Xbox, which I do understand,
Yeah,
you don't want to put it on your rival's console. I mean, actually, if you're Xbox, because of the way the console market is tilted, I would absolutely want PlayStation owners to pay me to play it on and let Sony deal with the hardware problems that come with it.
Yeah.
that would be perfect in my mind. But and that's probably the world we're going to go to, is right where you'll be able to get the premium edition on both consoles. Sony will probably upcharge a little bit. Like it'll be, it won't be $69. It'll be $79 for the PlayStation version.
They're going to get theirs.
And that's, and then I can see Xbox doing the same thing. All right, it's $10 more if you want to play Spider-Man here on Xbox, right?
Do you think that that's because they have to go through and make sure those games are optimized for their console, and that does cost money to do that? Do you think that would be part of why they would want to increase the price of the title to cover the costs of having to go through and do that?
I think it'd be straight a straight tax. They'll say that.
That's fair.
But it'll be. I mean, there'll be some work for the port, but it's going to be a straight tax.
But how complicated is that? So, you've been in software and have a really good understanding of that. How complicated is it going to be? Like, and what kind of time frame do you think it would take to say, okay, if they announce tomorrow, you know what, Spider-Man's coming to Xbox and PC. What's the time frame if they started right then on being able to get that done?
Probably 4 months.
4 months?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Console. Here's the big advantage of console over PC, and this is for all things, but for game porting in particular, right? How many configurations are there for PlayStation? Like meaningful, not just change of the shape and whether it's solid, whether there's a disk drive or not.
I don't even know.
One. It's PlayStation, right? It's PlayStation 5.
Everything is it the same for Xbox?
Yeah, Xbox. There's nothing that Xbox will do between X or S, right? Like it's just a matter of how if you play it on the S, it tones down the graphics and there's no disk drive, right? Like so you just lower the setting a little bit, and okay. I think that's so when you develop for it, right? You develop for the X, and it'll scale down. You'll be on a lower setting mode or slightly lower graphics mode or whatever when you play on the S. I don't notice a difference between the two personally, and I have them both. I've side by sided them. So generally speaking, you just make one port, right? When you port for PC, how many configurations of hardware do you have for PC?
Ooh, I mean, I'd have to think. Are you think would you look at that in terms of like the process, like the graphics, the GPU and CPU?
And all the different drivers for each, and all that can be compatible? Like, how many different driver generations can you have that can work?
Shit,
You
I
can go
don't
back
even know,
five,
bro.
sometimes you can be able to download 4 or 5 different drivers for the same graphics card, depending on where you are in the process and how long it's been since you've updated. It's all going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to figure out how many different graphics cards are there. How many graphics cards in the current generation does NVIDIA offer?
Well, you got the 40 series, the 30 series, the 20 series, and the 10 series.
And you have the RTX and the there's another one, right? You have the laptop version.
Yeah, yeah. I guess
It's got
I
to
have
work
the
on all of those.
RTX. Yeah, and each one of those series, you've got like the say the 4060, 4060 Ti, 4070, 4070 Ti, 4080, 40, those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's something like the super. I'm not going to act like I completely understand what all of those things do because I don't. That's why I have
Mm-hmm.
Jigsy. But there are a lot of different options for sure.
And how many different types of RAM are there? How many different sizes can you
Oh
play?
Jesus, I don't even know what the max is, but can't you can pretty much get any amount, can't you?
And how many CPUs are there?
Well, I mean, you got to start thinking about all the different generations of just like, say, like the i7. I think there's like 12 or 13 generations. The i9, same, so, and they all, I guess, do different things.
Yeah, and there's also that's just Intel.
Yeah, and then you got to factor in Ryzen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And how many combinations can you make of just those 3 components?
Stop asking me math questions. I don't know. Jesus Christ.
Right. So if you think about it, like you have to take all of those combinations and you have to make it work for all of them, right? Porting to PC is hard. And a lot of the problems that PC players have is you have a console port coming over to PC that doesn't work well with certain combinations. That how are you going to test? How are you going to test every single one, right? And then different driver generations. So when it comes to like moving something from a PC, that's a lot of work. When it
Right?
comes to moving something to from one console to the other, there's some basic changes you need to make, some adjustments to, probably some adjustments to how the game renders and other some of the more detailed aspects that might be developed specifically for how PlayStation renders things and whatnot. And it might create graphical differences between the two, and we've seen that in the past. Um, but when it comes to it, you're just making one port, right? Versus PC, you have to make a much more complicated version that is able to work on a lot of different combinations of hardware and software. So when it comes to porting from console to console, it's easy. Like, I put that in air quotes, easy. But compared to porting it from a console, from just working on Sony to working on Sony and PC, it's more difficult. So when it comes to that question of like, why would they charge more to port an Xbox game over to Sony? It's because Sony wants to tax it, and vice
Well,
versa. They're
I
going to go
mean,
both ways.
look at PUBG, right? Like, from what I understand, I wasn't playing PUBG at the time, but that was primarily a PC game, and it went from PC, and then they ported it over to the. I know for sure the Xbox. I don't know if they did PlayStation at the same time, but from what I understand, that transition was kind of brutal for a while, as far as
It was
from
in
graphics
it,
and even from audio.
it was in beta for a long, long time on Xbox. It was in a free beta mode. That's when I played it. It was a free beta mode, and I didn't understand the point of it and stopped playing. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. Like, there's a lot to it both ways, right? It's not a. Um, it's not a. I mean, it's not an easy thing. It takes probably a couple of months to make a port work, going from console to console. But when you have that, like, but compared to console to PC, it's that part's going to be easier. But I think it's one of those things that, especially when you look at Sony and the spot they're in, we've seen from the trial. How many Sony exclusives make money? None of them. They're all break even at best.
Well, part of that's because they're paying these development studios to keep them off other freaking platforms too. So
Well,
I'm
yeah,
sure that
they're paying to
contributes.
keep them there,
The
and they're paying
money.
that they're trying to drive adoption, right, through exclusives. But the amount of money, even when they develop it in house, they're barely breaking even, if they break even at all.
See, and I think that Sony is looking at Microsoft's shift in philosophy, and I think that they're trying to adapt as well.
Well, they see the writing on the wall, is that if Microsoft creates is able to solidify the Microsoft as a distributor of games,
It's a
and it
wrap.
distributes to 60-70% of the gaming market, like of the non-mobile gaming market, like forget it. Sony's in a world of trouble. Right now, Sony is able to make the argument that the only battle that exists is between Sony and Xbox. But as soon as you say, well, it's Sony and Xbox plus PC,
Sony loses.
Sony loses. So they need that market. They need to tap it because they're held back, right? And I think when you look at the whole of all the data that came out of those leaks around the trial and what we saw, I think it's really obvious that Sony relied heavily on Call of Duty and a few other games like Call of Duty that were available everywhere, but focused, like, marketed heavily on Sony on PlayStation. And that's where their profit was, right? Like, that's where they made their money. They didn't make, their exclusives broke even or lost money. The Last of
Sure.
Us, right? And it's because they're limited distribution. You're not able to sell to a huge chunk of the market that doesn't own a PlayStation. And the market has basically pushed back and said, well, we don't feel the need to buy a PlayStation. So what are you going to do now?
Yeah, who knows, man? Who knows? It's definitely a lot more convoluted than it used to be, though, too. That's, and I've said this before, like, we're talking about strategy and everything else, and it just got me to thinking about how fun gaming was in the early 2000s before all of this shit got like so over corporatized. And then you get issues like we've been dealing with on Call of Duty with the matchmaking and just like we talked about last week, and those kind of things, and there just ends up being more into it than just making a good game, that people
Yeah.
will enjoy. Like all these other outside factors that people have to now consider, rather than being able to hone their craft, be good at their art, put a good game out, and let people enjoy it. And that's what kind of sucks about just I think the current state of gaming in general.
Well, from the current state of gaming, to the current state of Warzone, where are you feeling on Warzone now? I want to hear in a minute. I want to hear about how your mouse and key,
Sure.
journey is going. But what do you think about Warzone right now? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
All right. So, you know how I feel about the matchmaking. We just spent, a whole hour and a half last week talking about the matchmaking. I can't stand the predatory practices for the matchmaking. So we'll get that out of the way. We'll not talk about that. But what I do like is I like how responsive, and this applies for multiplayer too, how responsive Sledgehammer Games has been, and how responsive that Raven Software has been. They did
Mm-hmm.
a ton of quality of life updates in this last patch, in the last update that we didn't cover last week for season 2. They give you a
Yeah.
flight path now for the precision airstrikes on your mini map. That's pretty awesome. They now outline the mini map if you're on UAV. That's awesome.
Great
Uh,
change.
yeah, I think it's a great change. I know they made some audio changes overall, but I've been using the flexed perk like we talked about yesterday. I'm hearing fucking everything. It's great. And I got to give props and kudos out to the boys over on the Drop Shop, because without listening to their episode 400 of the podcast, Never would have even thought to run that perk. So I'm now running that perk until they nerf that shit. It's awesome. Um, Weapon balances. The state of the meta. What do you actually? Let's go back. What do you think about the state of Warzone right now?
I think it's okay. I think that there's a lot of quality of life changes that have really improved the game in a lot of ways, but I think we're still in the same thing that we've talked about before, where the BR feels like resurgence, and I like that there's a little bit more regainability compared to like original Warzone, like Warzone OG, in that there's like 5 buy stations and you have to try and find your way to one of those buy stations to get somebody back. I think it was a little bit stingy at the beginning, but I think where we are right now, it's too much, right? It's too much with the redeploy packs. It's too much with the Gulag tokens. It's too much with just always someone coming back with no risk to themselves, right? The second chance Gulag. It is just too many opportunities to come back. And to be honest, the regain in BR is too miserable, right? Like the guns that I mean, look, the ground loot is better than it's been probably all year,
Yeah, it's pretty solid right now, I think.
but toe to toe against somebody, somebody's loadout, you're still screwed like 9 times out of 10,
Yeah.
right? So you need to regain, but you also have to immediately regain to a buy station. But the problem is after the second circle, after the second circle, there are so few buy stations, and they're just at that point camped to oblivion, right?
Yeah, you got somebody cucked up in a window overlooking a buy station. I mean, it happens 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah. So the odds that you're going to be able to A, successfully buy back, and B, successfully regain. I mean, all you're doing is tanking your KD at that point, right? You're better off just letting your teammate live his life and die out and be done. And to me, that's a huge frustration. I get frustrated very quickly when it's just like I had one, was it last night or the other night, where we fought a team, I died. The guy in the gulag was obviously cheating. Whether he all full disclaimer, he probably wasn't. I just probably sucked, but definitely a cheater. And so I like, all right, that's it, I'm done. Teammate goes, I have a portable buy. Throws it down, buys me back, gets shot out of the air. Before I even hit the ground, he's gone back to the portable buy, and as soon as I'm done watching myself hit the ground, I'm back in the air. So I'm like, all right, I'm not going to try and land with you guys because there's a team here shooting at me. So I go elsewhere. I hit the ground. I believe I posted the video of my epic flight back. And then I loot up. I get into my first gunfight, and I get absolutely smoked by a Bass B because it beats my Avancer or whatever the heck I picked up. Just straight up, like, forget it. Like at that point, I'm like, I just don't buy me back. Buy UAV instead. But it's like those sort of like scenarios where like there's no winning, and it's like, you could have a decent game, and all of a sudden, and you come out, under on the KD because there's no regainability. Like there's no chance. You just get bought back, and you're just cannon fodder for people who are queued up and waiting.
Well, and that's what I was talking. I don't know if it was you or somebody else earlier. It's like, not last night, but the night before, I had a few 4-kill games, which is not a lot of kills, but if you figure, I think I'd be like 4-1 or 4-2 at one point. Then shit goes south, and by the end of the game, I'm either 4-4 or 4-5. It's like, to me, I don't like the idea of coming back more than twice. Like I honestly, I think it's just too much, and that's why I excelled in Blackout because there was no coming back. You
Mm-hmm.
either fucking made it to the end or you weren't coming back, period, the end. And I was totally okay with that. That, to me, that's more of like that BR feel. Right now, there's just no differentiation other than map size and player count between Resurgence and where we are on the big map. And that's what frustrates me to all get out because that blender that you just talked about, I've been in a month-long blender like that, and it
I'm in a month long.
sucks.
I have been in this blender since the year turned over. My kitty has fallen by half
Yeah.
since Christmas, and I am just the thought of going in and playing frustrates me. I would rather go in and play. Like right now, I'm having more fun playing zombies than I am playing BR because BR it just is blundering.
Yeah, it's very rough, especially when you play with teammates that just won't fucking die. I mean, it's like goddamn. I'll be like muted, and I'll be like, I hope this son bitch dies. Like fucking die, 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 die. Like before they buy me back.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, and it does tank your KD. And the other thing I want to mention, you mentioned the gulag. Can we, for the love of God, everyone petition Ted the Great Timmons and Raven Software? Please remove the lasers out of the gulag. They're literally on every single weapon. It changes the way you can play the gulag. It is awful. I would rather go back to fighting the Juggernaut, bro.
You know what? I don't mind the lasers in the gulag as long as you know what you're doing with them. Like as long as you're
I hate
cognizant.
playing that way.
But the problem is you get out of the gulag and you still have the laser and you can't turn it off, right?
Yeah.
And it's the always on lasers, right? It's not just the ADS. It's they're just always on.
Yeah.
And so it's like it goes back to the regain. The regain is just so bad right now. And that's one thing that I'll say that Resurgence is better at right now is regaining later in the game beyond like the first or second circle, because the odds that you can find a body to drop on that has good stuff significantly higher, right?
Yeah.
Like you can drop on you can drop in Resurgence and you're going to hit a body that had something, right? They had an SMG, they had a sniper, they had something with a camo on it. So at the very least, you should have something to fight with. Versus right now in BR where it's still generally spread out enough that if you see a body with good stuff, odds are he died trying to get from point A to point B and was got shot by somebody camping. And if you drop on that body, you're just going to be another body next to it. I had one the other day. I tried to regain on I saw a pile of loot. I'm like, oh good, there's going to be good guns there. And I picked it up, and before I could finish picking up the gun that I was looking at, dead. And in my body added to the pile of loot that was on the ground, and it's like, oh, that's why there's a pile of good stuff there, because someone's sitting there camping it from the fire station over there. And it's like, what are you gonna do, right? Like, otherwise, it's like I just fight with my gulag guns or whatever, and I'm just dead anyways.
Pretty much, yeah. Unless you can like just sneak somebody after you drop in, and pray that they don't get the notification when someone's dropping in, which does happen. The worst is also when someone hits the zip line, the redeploy zip, and then drops in. You get no notification for that. Supposedly that was supposed to be in the patch notes where you were, but that happened last night. We had a team drop on us because, again, I was the bounty, which seems to happen about every game anyway. We've talked about this too. But sure, there are some frustrating things going right now in the game. I think that, to me, the biggest issue, first and foremost, is matchmaking. You and I have talked about this. J-Rock and I have talked about this on Twitter. Pubs right now feels worse than ranked. It should never be that way. Pubs is a casual mode. Pubs should not be sweaty, dude. Ever. You know what I mean? Like, and the matchmaking is just fucking absolute terrible. It feels like more dialed up in pubs right now than it does for a lot of people in ranked. So I think that's kind of contributing to it. But the other thing for me, and you talked about the whole mouse and key thing, and we can cover that here in a bit, but I think that's part of why I'm keeping pushing through, because I'm focused on learning something else. So I'm more focused on that than on some of the dumb shit that's happening in the game. And I'm finding that my blood pressure is not going up as high because I started that whole thing anyway, knowing that I was already in about a 3-week blender, and I was doing shitty. So fuck it. I may as well just learn a new input and, take my lumps.
Well, I was watching you on stream yesterday, and you did something with your mouse and key. Why don't you tell me about it?
Oh yeah. Well, I previously, before yesterday, my mouse and key PR was like 6 kills for 3,600 damage. I did that, I think, last week. And by the way, I'm on day like 9. I think I'm starting day 10 today on straight up mouse and key, no controller. I haven't touched my controller in that long. But yesterday I ended up having a 11 kill 3,600 damage game, and that was my PR for mouse and key. For context, on controller, my PR for this map, Urzikstan, is 14 for like 5,200. And then, in Verdansk, it was 16 for 6,200 damage. So just to, put that in a little context, I know 11 kills is not a lot, but for learning a new input and being less than 3 weeks total on it, I
Yeah.
felt like it was worth sharing.
Yeah. You know what? Congratulations. It's
Thanks, man.
mouse and keyboard is hard. It's hard to learn. It is a 100% focus, right? Like you don't get any gimmies. And I'm proud of you for all the work you put in and how well you've been doing.
I appreciate it. And, since we're talking about mouse and key, I don't even know if we really brought this up, but, with the season 2 update, they made a lot of quality of life improvements for mouse and key players. Well, really everyone in general, but
Mm-hmm.
specifically for the mouse and key with the aim, the idle sway, and also making sure that your bullet actually goes where your reticle is. Like, that's kind of a big deal. And just the centering on the reticle and those kind of things. And, people tagged me, or I think you even tagged me about, whether, that being a big deal and this and that. I mean, in fairness, I'm not going to notice that because I'm so new to the input, like someone like Huskers or, the top tier players or people like we know, like COD Watchdogs. And, I
Mm-hmm.
think Kelza might be on mouse and key. I'm not sure. But we know some mouse and key. Lipe, they're going to notice that stuff way more than me. So I think that's another W for the mouse and key community too.
Well, and I think it's one of those things that it's like, look, it helps both inputs, and especially if you're sniping, right? I mean, it didn't really affect sniping, but if you're long range, not sniping, but long range fighting, right? I think it's one of those aspects that was it was hindering people, and they didn't. Most people didn't realize that they were being hindered, right? Like I tried to explain to my IRL group that this is different and it's a big deal, and it was met with a lot of like, I don't know what that means, right? Like I don't know what idle sway is, and I think that comes down to how many people play this game and have no idea how it works and why things work a certain way, and they just kind of adapt to the way things are going. And I think that's one of the things that needs to be corrected, I guess. Like we got to find a way to inform people on why these changes are as big a deal as they are.
Well, that's kind of our job, isn't it?
Kind of is.
I mean, that's what I look forward to, and that's why we both pay attention to the patch notes. And the great thing is having you here. You're able to get into the technical weeds, a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and that I think that provides benefit to people that would watch this or would listen. So yeah, like I felt like those changes were like seeing everybody excited about it is great because 2 weeks prior to that, I'm seeing people who've been on mouse and key forever saying, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to controller. You know what I mean? Like, and just
Yeah.
leaving the input they want to play. And I'm going to go ahead and say also, I know why they defend that input, mouse and key, so much because honestly, it's fun as hell to play. I love, like, I don't know that I'll ever pick up a controller again. I'm having that much fun on it, even when I'm getting crapped on, which does happen a lot.
Yeah.
It's just
Aim assist.
it is a way more rewarding input to play on for sure.
There's a lot to it. There's a lot of benefits to it. I keep looking at they have a hybrid controller. Have you seen that?
The deal with the thumbstick on the like for your left hand.
Yep.
Yeah,
I keep eyeballing that. I might one of these days I might venture back into that once I get a little bit better setup.
that's not on like frowned upon hardware, is it?
It shouldn't be. So Call of Duty embraces and fully supports hybrid input now. I don't
Okay.
know if you know this, right? Like you can have, so if you're on PC, if you're on PC, you can do this. If you're on console, you can do this, but it takes a little bit more effort. If you're on PC, you can keybind straight up. The only thing that they restrict you in is your aiming device,
That
right?
makes sense because they don't want you abusing aim assist while you're supposed to be on mouse.
Right. So the only thing that they ask you, so in Warzone 1, they asked you to have they asked for your input type, right? It was controller or it was mouse and key, right? It was one or the other. But now they ask you to commit to an aiming type, right? Which is mouse or controller. Beyond that, if you have a keyboard and a controller plugged in, you can mix and match both with the exception of where your aiming is. So you could potentially have things on your control, have shortcuts or something set up on your controller that you could then that you could use while you're playing mouse and key. I don't know why you in particular would, because keyboard you have all the buttons, but it would allow natively for you to use these thumbstick key devices and a mouse to aim, which I think is pretty cool.
That you talked about the other hardware and like the hybrid devices. I know a guy like, and I mentioned this before. Maybe at some point, maybe this is a conversation for offline. But my guy Pitbull Reese, I,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, I think he's a quadriplegic, but he still plays at a high level. He's using that mouth device.
Yeah,
He's got it on his chin. I'd love to get him on here and talk about that.
yeah, we should talk about that offline. I'd
Yeah, but
love to hear about his experience and his opinions on some of this stuff.
I think that's really interesting, and I wonder like if something like that has like the aim assist, or if it's considered a mount. Like, you know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
does that fit into that? Like that's really really interesting. But let me ask you this: so back on like the season 2 thing, what are you feeling about the meta right now?
I think the meta. I think we're in a good spot, to be honest. I think there's a lot of options right now. The tech evolvery,
Mm-hmm. I just call it
if
the
it
Evolver.
evolver.
We
I
should
think
get
it's
Alex to say it, and
yeah.
however he says it is that's how we're gonna
Yeah,
call it.
it's French. It's supposed to be French, so we should ask the Frenchman to say it. Alex, if you're listening, tell us how to say it. But I think that is going to be it is now taken over the easy to use meta, is what I'll call it. It owns the easy to use meta. And it should own the mouse and key meta too, because it is just fun and
It
easy to use
it really
to
is.
be.
I've been using it the last few days, but fun fact, that thing's already caught a nerf today.
Did it though?
They reduced it.
Did it? Did it really catch a
Yeah,
nerf?
it did. I mean, yeah, I hear your point. Let me pull this up real quick, and I'll tell you because I want to give specifics. I should have been prepared for this. My bad.
I have them.
You do?
Some of us come prepared.
Oh, look. Okay, so the 7.62 ammunition, it caught a damage max damage reduced to 40, down from 45, so 5.
So close range damage. That's first damage range.
Yeah. Max damage range reduced 36.83 meters, down from 40.64.
Again, that's first damage range. That's close range.
I mean, I can confirm up close. I absolutely fried a couple kids in the last few days with that
Yeah.
gun. So that's probably what they're trying to adjust for.
Yep.
Near mid damage range reduced to 49.53 meters, down from 53.34. Neck damage modifier reduced to 1.2, down from 1.3. And then upper torso and upper arm damage modifiers, same reduction. And then your upper leg damage modifier reduced to 1 from 1.1. So maybe it's not like that big of a nerf. Maybe that's why you were saying, did it? I mean, the fact of the matter is you have to look. This kind of goes into what I was saying about Sledgehammer and Raven earlier. And you know what? As much as I'm having fun using that gun, I actually am glad they're paying attention, because we're not having metas that last 6-8 weeks so far.
No, and I think that's good. They're keeping on it, and I'll tell you what they're nerfing here. This nerf. So this came out, and to your point, is absolutely true. To your point, yesterday someone posted and pointed out that you can run this in tac stance as a secondary, and it's very, very effective.
Was that true game data?
It might have been.
I think he put a build out too for that. The 5.56.
Yeah, but I think it was viable on both. But you look at it, they attack the close range. They want this to be a mid to long range gun,
which it should be.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board, right?
Yeah,
and you look at what they're attacking. They're attacking the max damage range, the close range, right?
Yeah,
great, cool. You know why? The SMGs are fantastic right now.
Ram 9.
I have no problem with the SMG meta right now. You have the HRM9, you have the AMR, whatever, that the other one.
The AMR9.
AMR9. You have the Ram 9.
That's fun as hell.
I like it. I've been running that. I've been running that in this. That's my loadout right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm running too.
It's frying.
Yeah.
And then you have the Striker 9.
Mm-hmm.
The Swarm is still viable, right? 100 rounds. You know, it doesn't fry, but you know, if you're bad shot, it's great. A lot of bullets, very fast, and has a big mag. I mean, there's something for everybody. Close range.
Yeah.
There's even some shotguns that are still viable, right? Like if you're barrel stuffing somebody,
sure.
Or you know, you could always do the ultra close range meta and just throwing knife them.
There are people that are calling for those to be nerfed right now, and I don't really know how I feel about that.
They can suck it.
I mean, because at the end of the day, I would think there would be more of an uproar for the melee to be nerfed. It has been nerfed, yes, by 30%. I get it. But it's still ridiculously OP, dude. If you and I drop on a roof and I grab a weapon first and turn on you and start shooting you, and we're very close and I'm not missing shots, you should 100% not be able to beat me to death ever. And that's just the way that's the way it always has been. Are you
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't.
Dude, it's from as far back to Verdansk. I shot somebody in the face twice with a 725 on the balcony at restaurant. Twice I turned bop bop and he beat me to death. He ate the bullets and beat me to death.
Yeah, all the way up until like Caldera. You could melee. You could beat somebody on a melee if you landed on them. You could beat them to death with a melee before they could kill you, even if they turned on you as you landed. Like it, and you know what? And especially with starter pistols or with straight out of the gulag guns, you should 100% be able to do that. Because otherwise, how else are you going to regain aggressively? Like the only other regain you have is to go and hide somewhere and scavenge something. It's the only way to make an aggressive regain work.
By being able to beat somebody to death that's shooting you in the face?
Yeah.
See, I'm sorry. I can't agree with that. As somebody that shit happens to all the fucking time, no.
As someone that does that shit all the fucking time, yes.
See?
Or used to, because it's harder to do now. But like, you should absolutely, like, if you can drop on somebody and get the advantage where you're like on there, and granted, the audio has to work. Okay, the audio has to work, and so I'm gonna say that right now the audio doesn't work, and it's stupid. Okay, but when the audio works, okay, like in Verdansk, the audio worked, right? If I could drop in on somebody, and they're not gonna stop and look for me, absolutely, they should not be able to get out of that in one piece. Like, it should be on me to screw up at that point. There should be nothing you can do to walk away from that because you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, and maybe that happens. That's happened to me a few times, but most of the time it's that kind of bullshit like I was telling you. I legit grab a shotgun, turn, start shooting you in the face, and you're able to lunge through that and kill me. Come on, bro.
The
Fish
lunge
should.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
The lunge is ridiculous, right? I'm talking about though when you are on someone, you're within 2 meters of someone, like you should be able to beat them down and beat whatever gun they have in their hand.
Well,
If I
at
can
that
close
point,
that gap, now the lunge, get rid of the lunge. The lunge is absurd. I'm not going to argue that, right? The lunge is ridiculous, and they've nerfed it. And they need to nerf it again, I think.
I think
But if I
another
but if I
20%.
but if I can close the gap and be, you know, if I can have my penis next to your butt and beat you down, right? If I'm close enough that we're touch nugglies, like I should win that every time. That
Jesus Christ. Fucking hell, dude. I got nothing. This is a family-friendly show, despite my few F-bombs. Oh, my God. My whole thing is like, if I'm shooting you, you shouldn't be able to beat me down. If I'm shooting you, you shouldn't be able to beat me down. But if you're that close, okay, I kind of get it. Like, if you're already that close, but you shouldn't be able to run through rounds and then beat me to death as I'm shooting you. That's the part that pisses me off.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the lunge. And that's what that is. That's the lunge, right? It's like you're able to start throwing hands from like 25 meters out.
Yeah.
And you're landing hits, right, as you get through, and that's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
That's what frustrated me last year or last game when they nerfed the damage that the melee does and they left the lunge alone, because it just made regaining that much more impossible, right? And I got to go find the clip. I have one where late rebirth, my buddy buys me back, and as he does, a guy on top of Chem, I think it was Chem, is just on the roof, or it must have been prison, sniping them and holding them, and they can't rotate to zone, and it's like getting a final circle. So like they're toast. Like if they come up, they're dead. And this guy's holding it on the roof. I dropped right in on him, and he didn't come out of his hard scope until I already had my fist in his face, right? And I just dropped in, beat him down, took his stuff, wiped his teammates that were, coming out of prison below. I think it was prison. They come out below, and I shoot them, and then my team comes up, and we win the game. But like, if I don't have that ability to beat him down quickly, like if I needed to 3 or 4 hit him down, he finishes his turn on me and gets the kill. But he straight up ignored the sound of me landing on him, and I was able to, because of my angle, defeat his audio cues.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll try to like drop back further to where maybe they won't get an audio cue. But you know what's funny is I can remember the very first assassination I ever got in Warzone. It was in Verdansk. And my buddies were at the hospital, and the woods right outside the hospital. Yep. Guy killed me. He still was fighting with my buddies. I go to the gulag. I win my ghoulie, and as I'm dropping in, I'm like, I'm gonna assassinate this MF. And I dropped in, and sure as shit, he's dialed in on my buddies, and I was able to assassinate him. And that was awesome. I didn't beat him to death, nothing. I just tried to assassinate him. That's another thing too on the mouse and key. I got to figure out, like, be a little smoother about, because I've had a couple opportunities where I could do assassinations, and because I'm so clumsy, I messed it up. So yeah. I
always had the problem is I had too many buttons, and I could never remember where everything was. So I would always lose track of what button had my melee on it. And so I'd be in a position where I'm like, I'm going to melee you to death. And if I hit you, I win. And then I'm like throwing nades and like doing other stuff because I'm just spamming all the wrong buttons. So yeah, that was always a challenge.
Yeah.
But that's straight up a memory issue.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, and there's a lot to think about, especially when you're on that input. So again, that's more credit I have to give to the mouse and key community. Is like, it's a lot easier than just pressing a few buttons on a controller, or a lot harder, because there's way more shit you have to think about.
Yep. You got to commit all that to memory. But
yeah.
Yeah, I think overall the meta is great. We're in a great spot. A lot of options. A lot of stuff is very competitive, if not top tier. I don't think it's viable to say that there's an absolute meta SMG right
Sure.
now. We have options. It's sniper again. We
Yeah, I
have
was going to ask you to mention that is, the XRK Stalker is now one shot. I've been using the crap out of that over in multiplayer. Like that's my sniper because it just feels better
mhm,
than the Cat AMR. But yeah,
the
so
cat.
why don't you
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit?
no, I think it's good. I think what they've done with the damage range cap is solid. Kind of what they had at the end of Verdansk, right? Where they had you had limits to how far you could one shot somebody. Which I mean, let's be honest. If you're out past 80, 75, 80 meters, the odds that you are one tapping somebody in the head as they run low, right? The odds are you're two shotting somebody, right? It's just sometimes you'll get it. Sometimes most of the time they'll rotate at the last second. You hit a shoulder, you hit the neck. You're doing they slide cancel and you whiff over their head. Um, and so I think in terms of limiting that, I don't feel the effect of it as much unless I'm trying to long bomb somebody. So like for example, right before that came out, I hit my PR of on this game of one shot down distance of 400 meters, which is slightly less than my Verdansk PR of 790 meters. Slightly less.
That's that ain't slightly less. That's like 50% less almost, dude.
But I don't think this game renders as far. I think it's harder to get that distance rendering out quite right. But that being said, and the velocity is way low. It was almost 2,000. Like some of those velocity, like the velocity you could have on some of those snipers in Warzone 1 were pretty crazy. But that being said, yeah, no, it's what they've done with snipers is good. I hope they continue to expand it. I could see a scenario in which you add a Car 98 back and you give it a maximum, something that's super mobile like that, but you give it an even shorter maximum, like 45, 50-meter headshots, where your extreme mobility is a trade-off of, it's high risk, high reward. I think we can do that. I think there's room to expand the sniping a bit more.
I want to see more semi-auto stuff though. Like the interceptor was just fun as hell for me to run. I like we've talked about it. I've always been all about the semi-autos, and in fact, I still run that in multiplayer. I like it. The EBR was one of my favorite guns from Warzone One. Like I really hope that we can get to a place to where we can have a little bit of more of a variety for the long range. More snipers. I mean, like we got guns like the SPX, fantastic in multiplayer for Modern Warfare 2, never been viable in Warzone ever. The what is it? The Victus is another one, and that's on the ground. Like I think that the big bolt action snipers that are like 50 cal type snipers should all be in the same category as that Cat AMR. One shot headshot from anywhere, right? And
Yep.
then if you want to do like the mobility ones, like at range, like they're doing with the XRK, I'm okay with that. But at least like make sniping good again, make it great again.
Yeah. You know what I'd like to see them do? So with snipers specifically, there's no rotational aim assist. And the aim assist bubble, if there is one, is incredibly small compared to an AR, right? At the same range.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see them extend that to semi-autos. Like if the reason why the inhibitor, no, not the inhibitor. What is it called?
Well, you got to kind of lump the interceptor and the enforcer in
Interceptor.
together.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, those things. And the 6.8. There's a few of them out there. The reason why those are a problem, why they were so problematic, is not because they kill quickly, which they do. But I mean, as an alternative, you have what's it called? You have one-shot snipers, right? So like what's
Mm-hmm.
the difference? And I think the difference is one-shot snipers are very, very high skill, right? Compared to just an AR. because they don't have the aim assist. They will, you must track your enemy. You must get the shot properly.
Sure.
There's no letting the drag do it for you. There's no letting the system correct for you. Put that on the semi-autos, right? That was the problem, is that you could just track somebody endlessly, just and just pound shots downrange until you hit them, 2 or 3 times. Make it more difficult to use.
Yeah, you don't have to
be a higher damage. Yeah, and I think that's the problem, is that they put, and this was, in my opinion, what was wrong with the Car 98, and why so many controller players loved a gun that they shouldn't have loved as much. It had aim assist.
Right.
Because it was a marksman rifle. So the Car 98 was a marksman rifle.
Was the Swiss K31, was that sniper or marksman?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to remember what category it was in, because I know it was a bolt action. That was a sniper rifle, wasn't it?
The Swiss was in sniper, yeah. They both used sniper ammo.
I liked that better than the Car 98.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would have chosen it 100 times.
The Car 98 was a lower skill gun because of that. Because it would drag for you. It would follow, right? So if you catch somebody on the run, it was easier to hit those shots. And
right.
So I think, and that ultimately was the same problem with the Interceptor, with the 6.8, with some of these other single fire guns, is you had a fast fire rate, specifically the Interceptor. It was a very fast fire rate, and it had aim assist, and it was very easy to use. So of course you just sit there and just point it in the general direction and start spamming shots, and eventually you're going to get hits, right? And you compare that to a traditional sniper rifle, where if you actually have to aim at your target, you have to hit your target even on controller.
Sure.
And I think that's the difference on why those semi-autos, when they do hit very well, why they're so out of whack.
Sure. So that's, I mean, overall, I think things are in a decent place. There's still a lot of room for improvement. I like the quality of life changes that they did, and a lot of that stuff that we've been asking for a long time. I think that there's still some things that they could fix. I think it's going to be a work in progress, and I'm just happy they're as responsive as they have been and been on top of things like they have been.
I have it. Yeah, I agree. They've been very on top. You can't argue that that Sledgehammer Games has not been on top of what needs to be changed and what needs to be looked at. So hats off to them, 100% on board with that. But yeah, I think overall, I think there's still some struggles that the game is dealing with, and I think it has to do predominantly with the BR and how often you're coming back.
Yeah. Well, in the matchmaking, you got to factor those two things in there too at the same time.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, but speaking of matchmaking and something else that's not made in heaven, we got some trouble brewing out there in the competitive league, in the competitive world.
Yeah, and so just a little bit of a recap. So Activision has now laid off a total of, if I remember correctly, it's 60 out of their 72 esports employees. They laid off that many. So that right there,
sign of things going well.
Yeah, it is not. It's not a sign of things going well for the Call of Duty League, or the CDL as we call it. Activision has also signed a deal, an exclusive broadcasting deal with Google / YouTube to have the broadcasting rights for CDL matches. One of the big things that was good about last year with that being on Twitch was the watch parties. So Optic is the biggest brand. They're the Dallas Cowboys of the Call of Duty esports scene. They just are. And unfortunately, there's a lot of similarities, and I can get into that too. But they're just a big brand, right? The green wall is huge. It's everywhere. Scump would pull in on some days 90,000 concurrent viewers at a time. And then he would do the watch parties with Methods. And he'd have another 8, 10, 20,000, something like that. It'd be a lot of people, and it would be more than what was on the actual official Call of Duty channel for Twitch. People really only pulled that up, the Twitch channel, for the drops. So, and by the way, if I don't know if you have those enabled on your channel.
I do.
All right, good. So we won't get into that. But people would have that up, but then have a tab open for that, but then go over and watch Twitch. Or I'm sorry, go watch Scump on Twitch. Fast forward to this year, they're now on YouTube. Scump at one time had watch parties where he was broadcasting on both YouTube and on Twitch, but on Twitch, he was not showing any gameplay footage. And I'm not even sure there was any audio. It was just him and the other guys sitting on the couch kind of talking about what was going on. Well, they ended up getting taken down mid-broadcast, right? So that automatically right there, if you're going to do that to the biggest star your game has ever had on a competitive side of things, that should tell you something right there. So they did that. I know Hex was not very happy, and a lot of the other people were not happy about the exclusive deal that was signed with YouTube for the broadcasting rights of the CDL season. So you factor those things in, and now there's a lawsuit, and the lawsuit is actually for they are suing between Hex and Scump. They are now suing Activision for $680 million.
It's a pretty penny.
Yes, to the CDL teams for holding a monopoly over the esports business, the sponsorships, and the revenue streams. So from what I know is it's a $25 million buy-in to have a team, right? Hex had originally sold Optic for 20-something million. He ended up buying it back, and he wanted to get a CDL spot. Activision said, no, you got to have billionaire investors. So they gave the spot to Nadeshot, who then formed the 100 Thieves team out in LA. Right.
Okay.
So fast forward that, before it became the CDL. So we'll not fast forward, we'll go back. Before it became the CDL, they did have a team in Chicago called the Huntsmen, but that pretty much everybody knew that was Optic, if you will. And then there was the Dallas Empire. This is, 2019 is when I started watching these. A few years later, they end up actually forming the CDL, not the Call of Duty World League. And then Optic merges with Envy because that's the only way Activision was going to let Hex in on that whole deal. So that's where the trouble initially started. Then you factor in those other things that I described earlier. And now you have a lawsuit from two of the biggest names, if not the biggest names in the Call of Duty competitive scene ever.
That's a lot going on.
Well, it is a lot. And one of the things, too, that you and I talked about before we started this thing, the thing is evidently, and I'm not entirely sure on this, but evidently Activision is taking money from these teams, almost like rent money from their revenue and other sources of income that they have outside of the Call of Duty League.
Right. But that would be just from the team. But the teams are largely CDL teams, right? They're not like, it's not like Feuds that has.
It is Feuds.
Well, yeah, but it's Feuds Atlanta, right? Atlanta Feuds.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. It's still the Feuds
right?
team.
But it's not like, like Feuds itself has a whole brand where it's like, there's no way CDL is touching stuff that Feuds is doing in Fortnite or whatever, right?
Maybe not Fortnite, but they're still requiring money and from these teams, but periodically. Where do you think that comes
it's not
from?
much different. It's not much different than other sports teams, right? Like the Cowboys, every time they sell a jersey, they're paying a piece of that to the NFL.
Yeah.
Right. Every time they sell a mug, they're paying a piece of that. Right. Every TV sponsor that they cut, there's a piece of that goes to the NFL. The NFL takes a slice of everything. That's no different.
So I think, though, that what's happening here is that Activision took the money grab from YouTube. Hex and those guys are upset about it. They're also upset about the way it all went down with him trying to get back into the league. They're upset about the current situation with how money is distributed and how it is taken away. They see blood in the water with Activision laying off 60 of their 72 employees. I think they're almost trying to almost force a reset, because from everything I've been told, competitive Call of Duty was so much better before corporate Activision got involved in it. And that's not just from people that I'm listening to on podcasts and stuff like that. It's people that I know that used to watch it religiously
Yeah.
and just said it was a much better experience.
Maybe, I don't know. I have such limited experience in actual watching the CDL and watching the competitive side of things, so I couldn't tell you one way or the other. But I mean, I don't know. I haven't read the whole document, the whole filing, so I'm just going off what people say. But I just don't know. I don't know what this is going to accomplish besides Activision. If it looks like it's going to be a problem, or I guess Microsoft now, just closing competitive COD, just shutting it all down and walking away. It's been like, when was the last time esports has made money in general?
Well, maybe it just needs like I said, a reformatting. But I have something here that I'd like to read to you.
Yeah.
So this is part of the lawsuit filing. Prior to the formation of the Activision COD League, organizers sold league and tournament broadcasting rights to a variety of broadcasters, including online streaming services like Twitch, media platforms like YouTube and Facebook, and conventional cable networks like ESPN. Because the professional Call of Duty market was a competitive one and that offered players and teams a variety of choices, i.e., choices about which leagues and tournaments they should enter, league and tournament organizers had an incentive to sign broadcasting rights that were beneficial to the players and teams rather than just the organizer. So think about it. The teams aren't getting any of the money from the broadcasting deal. And see, that's where it differentiates between the NFL, because the NFL teams do get part of the TV money.
Well, yeah, but it's, they get whatever cut is offered to them by the league. It's not like they get control over that.
Well, they make up the league. They're the ones that do the negotiating. And then the players get a part of that too with the NFL Players Association, things like that. So what it sounds like to me is they're also pissed off because they're not getting any revenue from the Google YouTube deal.
Yeah, but you got to ask the question: is there any revenue at all?
Dude, it was like $300 million deal.
Yeah, but last I checked, the league isn't making money.
Yeah, but they're not spending $300 million. There's profit in there somewhere. I mean, you can't as a league expect the teams to foot the bill for all the stuff that happens throughout the year and then not give them any of the proceeds from the events that you make them pay to participate in, that helps you generate ad revenue also. Like, you can't do that. They should get something out of it if they're not in.
Yeah.
Based on this, it sounds like they're not getting anything.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's one side of a complaint, right? Where they're going to absolutely push the upper limits of everything they can claim. And, it's one of those things that we'll find out in court if it gets that far. Like, exactly how much of that is true and how much of it is BS. Right? How much of it is posturing.
No,
and we see it all the time, right? Like, in different lawsuits, right? Like, where one party says, "Oh, I'm owed all this money because look at how much." You see this in corporate lawsuits all the time. The company makes so much money, right, based off of my input on it. And then when you get down and you start looking at the actual, spreadsheets, there's not a lot of money there to begin with, right? Like, how much, the YouTube deal aside, how much money, like before YouTube, how much money was the Twitch deal generating?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
How much money was the CDL making year over year?
Well, you got to also think about this though too. Those teams and those other people were generating money off the watch parties.
Okay, but that's
Subs,
not. But that's
donos. Those. No, it's part of it. See, these guys don't just compete; they stream and they have other revenue
Yeah,
sources.
yeah, I know. What I'm saying is the CDL, like looking at the CDL, right? You had a one time, it's a one time buy in, right? 25 million was one time
Yeah,
to get you into the league, right? And then the operating expenses of 75 people paid 120K a year plus benefits, so their cost in Activision, that's 200K a year. It costs Activision to have them on staff times 80 people.
yeah, which they reduced that tremendously.
Well, no, okay, but last year, what was the cost? Right, that's the question.
Sure.
So when it was Twitch, before the YouTube deal was signed, before all these things went down, like just how much does it cost to run a LAN for to rent out a stadium for probably 2 weeks, right? Set everything up, try and sell tickets. I mean, what's the attendance of a LAN event?
Probably a few thousand people.
How much are they paying a ticket?
I don't even remember, dude. That shit was sold out when I tried to
Like
get.
$20, $30,
No, I think it's more than that.
paying $100 a person.
Maybe, yeah.
So my point is, like, you got to think about that. You sell it, right? The ticket seller takes a chunk. The venue takes a chunk, right? How much was all the so when you think about, like, when they have a sporting event, how much of the concessions are open, right? Like, I go to events. I used to live near HP Pavilion, or I guess SAP Center now, right? Sharks play there, and we would have events. They would have events off season events. They don't have the concourse open. They don't have they have like one vendor selling drinks and concessions, right? They don't have the full house open. They don't have all that stuff going because that costs a ton of money to staff. And, like, I'm just thinking about it from the point of view of the organizers. Like, how much money really is there in this? Like, how much profit when you get down to it? How much money is there to divide up? Now, I remember when FTX went down, the cryptocurrency guys, because crypto was heavily invested in esports across the board. They had a piece, like, crypto had a piece of every league. And when FJX, I'm saying FTX, it's FJX, when they collapsed, like, I forget what league they were in, they were tied to, but it was like 70% of their revenue was crypto futures.
I think it was either League or Overwatch. League of Legends
One of
or
those two.
Overwatch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of those two. Like, it just poof overnight. Like, they were in the hole hugely, right? And there's no, like you look at the amount of money you're making off of sponsors in these leagues. Like, I mean, how much is G Fuel actually able to pump into a league compared to, like, how much Pepsi sinks into the NFL, right? Like, they're not charging $1 million for 30 seconds of commercial time at the finals, right? But how much money, and, like, this is what we'll find out, right? We don't know how much money there actually is in the league. Like, it could be their flush. It could be Activision's pocketing $100 million every event, right? And that's just profit in their pocketbook. It could be they're losing $100 million every time they put on a major event. They could lose they could lose millions every time they do a LAN event. Just straight up, like, we're writing a check for this event so that everybody else can be successful and make money on their streams and subs. Like, we don't know. We don't know what that looks like.
What I would like to see is I'd like to see Activision just not take part in it at all.
I think that's what we're going to get. I think Activision's going to fold the CDL. They're just going to close it down or Microsoft. Because Activision's out of the picture, right? They don't make the decisions like this anymore.
Even if they do that, there's still going to be a competitive scene, and I think I think
sure
the players, the organizations, and the fans are going to be much better off if Activision just steps away.
Well, I just don't think you're going to see a league at all. I think it's going to be little tournaments, little
Probably be big
one-offs.
tournaments, yeah.
But it'll be like one-off, right? It'll be like, all right, we're gonna have a Texas tournament in Texas, and they'll just like some producer will rent the convention center instead of a stadium, and it won't be as grandiose.
Yeah, no, and you know what though? I'm okay with that if not. But I mean, listen, dude, we know how Activision is. Just look at their matchmaking practices. They're greedy bastards. So I mean, you have to also kind of put two and two together here too. Is there a little bit of hyperbole from Scump and Hex? Maybe. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there might be a slight exaggeration there, but let's not forget Activision is a greedy corporation. And I can say that because I know I'm never going to get invited to Call of Duty next anyway, so I really don't give a shit. I'm going to call it how it is.
Sure. In other words, that they're an American capitalist-based company where they have shareholders that demand a return on their investment.
Sure.
So, yes, they're operating properly. But, I mean, at the end of the day, right, like, it has to turn a profit somehow. And maybe the issue is that they were not able to create enough viewership to generate the ad revenue that offset the cost of putting on these tournaments.
Well, and this is the thing, and I said this whenever the deal came out with YouTube. Activision thinks that they came in and they made the Call of Duty competitive scene great. They did not. The competitive scene for Call of Duty was great before Activision ever got involved. And it'll be great after they're not involved too. So will it look the same? Maybe not. But you're still going to be able to see some high-level gameplay. And it makes me wonder too, with what they did with esports, what's going to happen to the World Series of Warzone? Because I got to be honest, that was fun as hell to watch, especially the LAN event. We spent 2 days watching that, did watch parties and stuff like that, and I'm hoping that's not going to be on just YouTube, as well.
Okay, but World Series of Warzone, like, it's a one-off tournament, right? It's a one-off thing, and I think that's what. And I'll bet World Series of Warzone made money.
Yeah, maybe.
I'll bet they made money, and I'll bet when you compare what World Series of Warzone did versus the CDL, which goes on for months, right? You have to fly these players all over the country to compete. You have to rent these massive venues every time you do it. You have to have this. Let's put it this way: you have to program a version of this game that's compatible with the broadcasting of it.
Well, the orgs foot the bill for travel and a lot of that other stuff. Like the Activision doesn't.
Activision employees aren't employed by the org.
Yeah, I'm talking about the
how many
players.
People? How many? Okay, fine.
And everything that goes along with that.
But think about, you had 80 people in that department.
Yeah, but we don't know how many of them traveled.
I've done trade shows. Like, if you want to, just a booth in a trade show, a very simple booth, was like an 8-person ordeal in a 30-person company. And that doesn't involve anything other than showing up, going to my assigned spot, setting up, doing the thing, and then tearing it down.
Yeah.
Right? For every one of us, there were easily 30 people on staff from the venue.
Sure.
And from the organizer, organizing every aspect of a trade show. And this is like a sporting event. So I think I think it'll be interesting, because I think, just like the acquisition trial, it's going to expose a lot of the inner workings of these orgs and these tournaments, and we're going to get to see, like, the inner workings of it. I'm here for it. I want to know more.
We're going to cover it,
I want to know
baby.
more. Yeah. So bring it on. Let's see what happens. I hope it doesn't destroy the competitive scene. That would be a huge disappointment, I think, at the end of the day. But yeah. But you know what? Speaking of getting killed, of something killing something, we have a new segment we're going to close out most of our episodes with now, and I think going forward. And we're going to try a couple different approaches, but right now we're going to do it just a description. Kill of the week. Jay, do you have a kill of the week?
I have 2 kills
in mind?
Yeah, it
All
was a
right,
nice
let's
little
hear.
2-piece, and here's why. First of all, for context, it is the first part of the clip that I just put out today on Twitter and through TikTok. And
Nice.
it is 2 riot shielders. These 2 douchebags were griefing us all the way through down, like almost through downtown. And I was able to work us into a position to where I could get shots on them as we're kind of going parallel, going to the gas. And
Yeah.
these douchers decide to try to hop on a 4-wheeler, and I had that tack evolver. That's a wrap. And dude, let me tell you, I killed them both, and I talked mad shit to them after I did it too.
I expect nothing less.
You?
I have a kill. It just happened last night. I haven't put the video up yet, so you'll see it. It is definitely going to get me some attention for my heat-seeking knife cheats.
Adam can have a field day with you, bro.
Yeah, he is. This is going to be great. I was playing on multiplayer. I was playing on Meat, and I was trying to push in with the sniper rifle because the challenge this week is sniper rifle kills. And we're on the warehouse side of Meat, so it's like you got the shipping dock, the loading dock, and it goes all the way back through, right? So it's a big long corridor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking down the corridor with my sniper rifle, and I know there's somebody out there. I see him, and he pops smoke, and he throws smoke grenade out. It's all black. I can't see anything, and I'm trying to like snipe through, like trying to see maybe somebody will ping it, maybe he'll come out of the smoke and I get a shot off. And I just throw a throwing knife into the smoke, and I die immediately. And on the kill cam, boom, kill with a throwing knife, dead from someone else with a different throwing knife. And when I go through, I can see out of the smoke comes the throwing knife right at me, right? I can see it coming frame by frame. I get the kill indicator. I get downed. I get the whole spiel. It was hilarious, and and just when you see the kill cam, it takes about 3 or 4 watches through to understand what the heck happened. But it was an absolute heat-seeking through the smoke throwing knife. It was glorious. I can't wait
awesome.
to get that up today.
Turn off your Cronus, bro.
Oh, dude, I straight up heat-seeking knife hacks.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well,
so
cool.
But on that note, I'm glad we at least having a little bit of fun in here. Had an action-packed episode. Jay, as always, you have been spectacular. The illustrious J007 TV, found on Twitch and Twitter under /J007 TV. I, of course, am Sub1KD, same locations /Sub1KD. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for listening through, and we'll catch you on the next one. This has been Sub1KD, along with J007 TV and the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. We're logging off now, so we'll see you next time.